All right, on this episode of Bare Knuckle Bowker, very excited to talk to an individual who has made waves in the UFC's heavyweight division and looks to do the same in BKFC, throwing down in their heavyweight category. And great getting to have Parker Porter on Bare Knuckle Bowker to cover a bit about that today. How's it going, man?
Good, man. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, doing good. I guess I'd just be curious to get your thoughts on the overall debut with BKFC. You took the win in front of a, packed arena and seemed like you showed a lot of respect to your opponent, Chase Gormley, who very well-traveled heavyweight fighter in combat sports in his own right. Just what were the overall thoughts on that BKFC victory?
Um, again, I've always tried to be as respectful and humble towards my opponents. Like some days it's your day, some days it's not. I've been on the receiving end of that, so it's never a nice sensation when somebody's kicking that dirt in your face while you're down. So I don't like to do that to anybody else after I beat them, unless they obviously really deserve it. But I haven't had anybody cross my path like that. So. Uh, Yeah, it felt great, man. It felt amazing. Thoughts on it are like I fell in love with it right then and there. I was a little apprehensive about it at first. I was like, I've never done anything bare knuckle before, and to be able to do it in essentially my hometown in front of a packed arena like that with such outstanding results. I was like, yeah, this is how I'm going to close out my combat sports career.
Yeah, that's so cool to hear because I feel like anecdotally, a lot of what I've heard from bare knuckle fighters that I've interviewed over the years is just how much that first fight can be just like such a revelatory moment, like in as far as like, okay, maybe this isn't for me. Whereas, a lot of people, find that it's a perfect combat sport for them. And it seems like the latter is kind of where you were at with that.
Absolutely, yeah. There's there's so many less things for me to worry about as far as offense and defense. And I've always been a little bit more of a naturally instinctive boxer. But with the head movement side of things in MMA and kickboxing, especially, that can get you in some serious trouble. You move your head, you're dropping your hands, you're doing all the dancing and footwork and stuff. That's all great for boxing, but it can really lead to some big problems in MMA. So I've been able to kind of bring that part of my natural instincts and tendencies out and really have it work well for me.
I mean, it's probably a great rule set to you because you're talking about how much you really enjoy like the at-range boxing work. Like I would imagine what you've learned in MMA with like the active clinch component of the BKFC rule set would also pay dividends as well.
Oh, huge, huge. Being able to, that's people that come from more of a strict boxing background. That's such a foreign thing for them. Whereas for myself, I feel like it's been so much easier to adapt to that because, like I said, I don't have to worry about getting kneed. I don't have to worry about getting swept or taken down or elbowed. You could really start to kind of flow and really start to dominate that clinch. That being said, I also can't throw elbows or knees myself. So it does change some components. But it's just a different element that I've really been able to enjoy a lot.
And how did it feel getting back after close to a 2-year layoff? Like, what would you say, I guess, the predominant factors were in all of that, just like the time off and stuff like that?
So the time off was, like trying to kind of figure out what I was going to do next. I knew deep down inside that I was like, I'm not done fighting. Where am I going to fight? What's going to make the most sense? What's going to be the biggest bang for my buck, so to speak. What, time is valuable. It's the one thing we have a finite amount of, and we don't know how much we have left of it. So I have 3 kids. I have a wife. I have a gym and a business of my own, as well as work. So trying to kind of balance all of that and just take a few moments to make sure I got the needle on my compass pointed in the right direction was pretty crucial. And then after that time off, I got back into training. Started feeling really good. I'm like, all right, you know what? This came across the table. I was always a little curious about it. Always felt kind of like the final frontier of combat sports to actually take the gloves off and make it even more real. So it's like, all right, let's do it. I've done jujitsu competitions. I've kickboxed a little bit, had some pretty bang out sparring sessions in boxing gyms, fought professionally in the UFC. So it's like, all right, where's the next level I could take it to? Take the gloves off. Let's see what we can do now.
So was the, I guess, decision pretty quick in terms of like, okay, bare knuckle boxing would seem like the path, or were you kind of entertaining certain, I guess, MMA free agency opportunities in that time period? Or, like I said previously, did it like pretty quickly settle in that bare knuckle was going to be the journey you wanted to really go on?
So I definitely was keeping more of an open mind. I was like, all right, we'll try the bare knuckle boxing because it's the first time taking the gloves off. Less things to worry about in terms of weapons and stuff like that, compared to MMA. But I had not completely written off doing bare knuckle MMA as well. I was interested in Gamebred. I think Jorge is running a great promotion there, and they've got a lot of good competitors, and they're doing great things. But after my first experience with bare knuckle, it just kind of like struck me like lightning. I'm like, no, no, this is where I want to be. I like this a lot. This is how I want to cap everything off.
Well, it seems like a great time to be getting into it. Like it seems like a lot of like UFC heavyweight talent do a really great job at transitioning over into the BKFC rule set. Like you could obviously cite someone like Ben Rothwell, who's the reigning BKFC heavyweight champion. So yeah, it seems like there's very much that transferable skill set and everything.
No, I agree. I agree. It obviously is very different from MMA, because of, obviously the rules set alone, but it's so much more similar. I think it's a good transition. It's also just really entertaining to watch too. It's so action packed with the shorter 2 minute rounds and everything. It's just like go, go, go. Having that dirty boxing element in it, being able to clinch and do the boxing work, but still also like if you're wrapped up, it's more of the traditional boxing where you're like, all right, you could play a different strategy game with it. So it just seems to be a good fit for anybody coming from that previous high level MMA background too. So I think you'll see a lot more guys make that transition into BKFC, and you'll start to see some really really competitive heavyweight fights, especially.
Yeah, I guess this is not really something I was intending to ask, but just going off of what we're talking about. I mean, this is purely hypothetical too, but what UFC heavyweights do you think could really come over and make a big splash in BKFC if they chose to make that transition?
Oh man, I actually I think Derek Lewis would make a huge huge splash in BKFC. Like he's such a powerful striker to begin with. He's such a boxing heavy fighter. I think he could be very successful in the BKFC. Easily make a run at the belt himself. Um, let's try and think who else we got going on. I'm like drawing a blank right now.
Or it could just be heavyweight combat sports athletes in general, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's just so many guys out there. It's just such a different rule set. If you pick any one of those heavyweights that has just that good old tough guy grit and is like willing to take the gloves off and they like to bang, um, it's just so much more well suited for guys like that. Uh, they you don't need to be. It's not a marathon. It's not like a traditional boxing match where you're going to go 14 rounds and it's very strategic the way you play each round and set things up. It's a lot faster paced, so guys can really just kind of get after it and go. And like I think that alone from a fan base makes it so much more attractive to watch. And competition wise, it's like, all right, get guys that are used to trying to have to condition for 5 minute rounds. And we're like, wait a minute, I only have to condition for a 2 minute round and it's just my hands. I don't have to do this grappling stuff. Um, it's it's such a smoother place to be. It's easy to adapt to from that kind of background. And a lot more of it too is dependent on yourself for the training that goes into it. You can do a lot more things individually to improve your skill set, advance your cardio and conditioning. You don't have to rely on having equally sized or competent partners for like the grappling side of things or like the kickboxing side of things. You could do so much more on your own.
Yeah, that's cool. I guess I never really thought about it through that particular lens, but that makes a great deal of sense. And I guess like kind of going off of that, I'm wondering how much you curate your camps differently for BKFC versus some of your prior UFC fights. Like I feel like the obvious would be there, just the lack of kicks, grappling, et cetera. But like what distinct ways do you curate your camp differently preparing for bare knuckle as maybe what you would do for an MMA fight?
So you could really focus a lot more on having your own schedule instead of relying on other people's schedules to be able to get the training session set up. Like, all right, I can plug in this amount of time here. I'm going to go work on some footwork. I'm going to shadow box. I'm going to get my lift in. I'm going to get this bag session in, and then you can sprinkle in some pad and sparring sessions wherever that you can fit them in, depending on what level of volume you like to have those for your camps. I typically will have at least one good sparring session a week, and at least two pad sessions a week. And then the rest of the time, I'm able to, like, all right, I got an hour before classes are going to start in my gym. I'm going to get my footwork done. All right, I got 30 minutes here. I'm going to go get a quick bag session in, and really work on these different areas that I'm focusing on, as well as conditioning the hands. Like, that's a big piece of the bare knuckle side of things that people don't really think about until they're in there actually throwing punches with no glove on. You gotta hit your hand. You gotta condition your hands essentially the same way that a Thai fighter or a kickboxer would condition their shins.
Yeah, because that's something I usually ask fighters about too. Just I feel like there's a lot of techniques that some fighters really swear by. I feel like some fighters are like, I don't really want to go that route. I feel like my hands are already plenty galvanized. But yeah, it seems like there's some cool techniques in that kind of regard, like working with the wooden Muay Thai boards, like gripping the sand, gripping the rice, like different things like that, it seems like.
Yeah, like I've got a 5 gallon rice bucket here, and just for general like wrist strength and grip strength, because obviously if I could be have my hand a little more relaxed when it's inside a glove, and it'll still kind of like help form it into a good punch. Or if the angle's not right, it's not going to be as detrimental when I make that impact with a glove on. Whereas when you have no glove on, that tiny little angle, your knuckles aren't perfectly flat, like the surface of a glove. They're not all smoothed out and dispersing the impact evenly. So you got to kind of prepare. So I am in agreement with, like my hands are pretty well sturdy, as far as the bones. I've been punching things for almost 19 years now. So in terms of the actual strength of the bones, it's more about just getting those funky little angles, kind of toughening up the skin and conditioning the skin, to not break as easily. Actually, there's a lot of lotion involved in making sure that my skin doesn't get dried out and crack or bleed easily, to keep everything more pliable.
Yeah, no, I hear you. It sounds like you're mapping out the situation well, and it seems like there's like a long-term focus to that. I guess in kind of talking about that, I'm curious as to maybe what the contractual arrangement is, like at least in as far as it like a multi-fight deal, because I know sometimes BKFC can be I don't know. It seems like a little more prone to like the single fight deals early on, maybe because of what I had mentioned before, where it can be just such like a defined test where it's like, okay, maybe not for me, or oh, okay, I really like this. I want to do this long term. So I guess in saying all of that, like, do you have a multi-fight contractual agreement with BKFC right now?
I do, yes. Yeah, I have a multi-fight deal with them, and I definitely am looking to make some waves. So I'm looking to climb my way up that ladder and get after that belt.
It's interesting because you had such a succinct fight the first time out. I would think that you could facilitate a turnaround that is like decently quick. Like, do we have anything in the works right now? Like, just a general idea of like when we might next be able to see you in the BKFC ring?
June 14th at Mohegan Sun again. I'm not at liberty to say against who yet, but that'll be coming out soon. But I can tell you it's going to be at Mohegan Sun, June 14th. So make sure you're there. Get at me for your tickets, guys.
No, it's awesome. Is it someone in the top five? Is it? I mean, I guess I'm maybe poking around trying to get some hints. I don't want to get you in trouble, but yeah, exciting all the same.
He's no slouch. He's not a ranked guy right now, but he's not. He's no slouch. He's nobody to be taken lightly. He's definitely a step up in competition from the previous fight. And I'm really looking forward to the two of us getting in there and setting off some fireworks in front of the hometown crowd again.
Perhaps another former UFC heavyweight like yourself.
No, but somebody.
Yeah, I don't want to be rooting around too much. That's just my natural
All right. It's all
curiosity,
right.
though. But yeah, no, that is exciting for sure, man, and probably facilitates a certain strength of schedule this year because, I mean, who knows what happens with that fight? Like, not to be presumptuous one way or the other, but who knows if you get like another similar kind of finish? Maybe we get another one in the calendar year. I mean, who knows? It seems like a good time to be Parker Porter, though.
That would be, yeah, it feels like a great time to be Parker Porter right now. I'm feeling very, very blessed and very thankful for everything that has been coming across, coming into my life and the way that we've been able to handle everything. Things are going well at my gym. We're starting to expand a little bit. We're getting more and more people in here, training, learning, sharing the knowledge, and creating an awesome culture around the combat sports.
And that's so important too, man. Like that's something that I've come to find too. Like obviously I don't train at any kind of professional level, but like on and off hobbyist kind of training, like there's something to be said about having that kind of like a space, that kind of, familial, like supportive, communal sort of structure that a martial arts gym can really represent. So that's awesome that you're, making great strides with that, man.
Yeah, this stuff has changed my life for the better in so many ways, and I just want to be able to share it with people as much as I can. Is there's a lot of self-discipline that you learn to develop, and I'm trying to provide an environment where people can do that, and it's not quite as intimidating, but you'll still get that same level of work and experience that you want if you're whether you're just a hobbyist or you're looking to learn a little bit of self-defense or you have aspirations of being an elite level combat sports champion one day.
Yeah, and I almost hate to ask you about this because I've seen different interviews where you're like, "Oh, this is going to follow me for the rest of my life," but you talk about like elite level competition, and I feel like a lot of people talk about that fight you had way back with a young John Jones. I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the Tom Aspinall situation, like just in as far
Yeah,
as like if you see that, getting booked this year or just general thoughts on that situation, I suppose.
I think everybody would love to see that get booked. We're just all kind of like sitting there, like waiting, like, whoa, what's gonna happen next? Like, when is it gonna happen? It's gonna happen. And Dana keeps teasing about, like, oh, we got this set, he's got that set, and then, Tom will say one thing and John will say another thing, and you're like, oh, what's going on? Yeah, I think that's gonna be like the fight of the century. That's gonna be very much along the same lines of like the Rumble in the jungle with Muhammad Ali. Like people are going to be talking about that fight for ages. It's going to be, I you know, I can't even really say. Like I want to go with John Jones because he's again been such a dominant champion. Really, nobody's been able to push his limit to really challenge his abilities in a way that we've seen as being. We've seen some close fights, but he still came out on top. And then when he comes back for a potential rematch with that same person, he just runs right through them like wet tissue paper. So it's going to be very interesting because um, Tom, everybody in the heavyweight division in the UFC, I think Tom is the one that has the potential to cause that kind of upset and dethrone the king. But John Jones is still the king right now. He's never really lost a fight. Even the one fight on his record that is a loss, like he was winning that fight. And anybody that's watched that before has seen that, the fight should have been stopped far before that illegal elbow was ever thrown. And, I feel bad for him even having that on his record as a loss because as far as I'm concerned, the guy's never lost a fight.
Yeah, and then that elbow has, since become legal. Like you're allowed to do the 12 to 6 elbows now and stuff like that. And I feel like there's been even some talk with like Dana White and I guess some other people in the space about like retroactively even changing that one loss, which like we're saying isn't really a loss in a way. Like it kind of reminds me of that, fight with Tsuyoshi Kosaka and Fedor years ago where like Fedor got the cut and it ended. I mean, I guess in saying that, I mean, that's a guy that it seems like Conor McGregor was flirting with the idea of him coming over to BKFC, like Fedor dropping the gloves. So it just seems like interesting times.
Yeah, it does. It does. I've seen big things about, like that Fedor has already signed with BKFC and then you see something else about it. So it's hard to see. It's hard to tell what's actually going to happen, but I think Fedor is a type of guy that would actually do quite well in BKFC too. And if I ever got the opportunity to share the ring with him, it would be amazing because I grew up watching him, trying to emulate a lot of stuff and learning from him. So it would be an honor and a privilege to be able to share the ring with him and potentially fight him.
And I keep seeing rumblings too of maybe Mark Hunt coming over and maybe doing a rematch with Rothwell, albeit in a different combat sport. So just more so speaking to the point of it seems like exciting times to be part of that BKFC heavyweight roster. And I remember I did an article on this, I guess, a few weeks ago at this point where like Conor McGregor was really highly touting BKFC's heavyweight division in terms of just the talent pool they have compared to a lot of other combat sports leagues. Like how much do you think McGregor has, I guess, served as like a signal booster for not just the company, but the sport of bare knuckle by proxy?
Oh, I think he's huge. You could take everything that he did for MMA with the UFC, and he's propelled that sport. The guy just knows how to grab people's attention and promote. And like I think it's been great for the BKFC. I feel like the BKFC is right now where the UFC was probably about 10, 15 years ago in its stages of development. And I think you'll see them grow to close to the same levels, if not the same levels, in a different way that the UFC has gotten to, and it'll be a substantially more common and viewed combat sport.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like having someone like Sean Wheelock on board is so invaluable in that kind of regard. Like, I feel like he learned so much from just, Art Davie and what happened with the UFC, kind of like in the really early nascent stages, just some of the regulatory issues they had. And it seems like Sean Wheelock is so well versed in just the regulatory considerations and just, helping not just the sport, but the company specifically encroach into like a lot of these newer markets. Like it seems like you see all these different athletic commissions just really giving the thumbs up to bare knuckle just with such a level of frequency. Like it's kind of cool in that regard. I feel like having a guy like Wheelock, who obviously great commentator in his own right for sure, but just seems like he's a guy who really like helps them out and helps with that, I guess, regulatory side of the growth of bare knuckle a fair bit.
Substantially, I would say. He's able to explain things too in a way that makes people, when they, at first glance, it looks just like the UFC did before it was legalized in all 50 states in the US. It's like, oh, this is barbaric. It's this, it's that. It's like, no, 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 no. You need to look at this. Here's the facts. Look at these technicalities. These are actually athletes. These are not just bums that you found in a bar that are just trying to brawl out for a couple bucks. It's it's just it's the next wave of combat sports that are gaining in popularity and becoming a lot more commonly enjoyed by everybody.
Yeah, no, it's a great sort of time, man, for sure. Yeah, no, cool that you have this multi-fight deal and you've got that fight lined up in June and stuff like that. Yeah, no, it just seems awesome, man. But I do want to be mindful of your time and what you're getting up to overall. It's been great getting to talk a bit, and I appreciate you making the time today, Parker. But figured I'd give you the floor if you had any kind of final thought you might want to add as we're wrapping up here on Bare Knuckle Bowker.
No, I mean, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you for reaching out and respecting the limited time that I have with a busy schedule. Just a big thank you to everybody that helps me on my path. My coach Ed Thornton, my go-to training partner and cornerman Dan Frazick, everybody that trains with me at my gym, Heavy Hitters Club. Thank you guys all for supporting me and helping us to grow into the community that we're here. My wife and my kids, thank you so much for always supporting me and standing by me with everything that we're doing. I know it's not an easy thing to watch dad get in there and beat people up or get beat up. But they've always got my back 100%. So just thank you to everybody that supported me through this.
Yeah, 'cause I feel like I saw an Instagram post that you might have been tagged in or something, and your wife was like, "Oh, I was so nervous before, but like, my husband's a badass and he got it done, so I was kind of set at ease after that." So, yeah, no,
Yeah.
love to see that.
Yeah, she was it was the first time that she was ever at my fight, but didn't go into the arena because she's like, I just don't know. I just don't know. And then like after she really heard the arena after my fight, she's like, oh my God, like I knew right then and there that everything was fine. And then she later divulged to me that she was actually more nervous, not because she was worried about me getting hurt, because she knew that I was going to like this too much. And then this was going to be the next chapter. Ah, all right, fine. But it is what it is. So, she's like, I'm behind you 100%.
Yeah, no, that's so invaluable, man, and that was definitely a thing I really liked seeing on your social media. Just love the, family-oriented dynamics. It's always great, man, and just yeah, super excited to see this next step in your BKFC career. I think you're an exciting addition to the roster. Absolutely. And yeah, no, I'll be peeping that fight in June, and hopefully we can get some specifics on that opponent and whatnot in the coming weeks. But again, to reiterate, thanks for coming on Bare Knuckle Bowker, and have a good rest of your day, Parker. Thank you.
Thank you. You too, man. Thanks again.